Reality is like a film set. There are directors,
Action!
producers,
Are we on schedule?
and even actors.
Can somebody get me a coffee?
The trick is realizing that you are playing all of these roles. You are the executive producer of your reality. My name is Daniel,
My name is Lauren.
and we're here to break the fourth wall to discover what's behind the scenes. And what you hear just might have you saying, "That's so meta."
Welcome to That's So Meta, where we discuss the mystical, magical, and metaphysical. My name is Lauren Marie.
And I'm Daniel James.
And today's episode, we're going to discuss the concept of fear, how it works, in what circumstances it crops up, and new perspectives on how to face it and handle it. But first, we would like to thank a couple sponsors and plug a couple things. If you want to start, Daniel.
Sure. Well, we would always like to thank our sponsor, Steel Town Entertainment. And we always like to talk about our cool cups.
We got great glasses.
We shoot these episodes in Steel Town Entertainment in Pittsburgh. And they are very accommodating to the local film community.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Steel Town, for always hosting the space for us to record these episodes, along with today's guest, which is also available on the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I'd like to talk about is I have another podcast now. So it is my second podcast, which is funny because I never meant to be like a podcaster, but now I have two shows. This next one is in the general paranormal universe. Okay, it's a paranormal podcast called Celestial Oddities. And I created this with my partner, Garrett Jageman. Garrett is a friend of mine that I shoot music videos for through his rap project, Skippyicum. And over the years of collaborating creatively on music projects, Garrett and I have a lot in common. We developed an organic friendship, and now we have the podcast together, which is cool because, being in the metaphysical community, it's nice to talk about, the more paranormal side of things and how that connects to metaphysics, which is a lot of what I contribute to the show. So if you're interested in hearing our stories on that, there's 2 episodes a month. Garrett hosts a live Q&A, and he takes phone calls from people who want to call in and ask questions. And then the second episode per month is where he and I pick a topic or a lecture, and then we discuss that for an hour. So the link to the previous episodes will be right down here in the comments. Celestial Oddities. It's fun.
Yeah. Very cool. So would you like to get started? I'm talking about fear.
Let's talk about fear.
So first of all, what is fear exactly? It's just a general sense of dread and panic about a certain situation.
It is a physiological effect based on belief systems that you have about any given circumstance.
And it can come up at any time for any reason.
All the time.
Always. There's really no warning or excuse. So let's discuss some more practical scientific reasons why we experience fear, and then we can go even deeper into the metaphysical side of it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm no scientist myself. Fear is what happens as a emotional and a mental and a physical response to anything that we think is threatening in some way, that the ego is triggered in a sense that it is in danger in some way, fight or flight, and adrenaline hits your blood and your heart rate increases, and we get into the fear of the worst, the what ifs. What will happen? What could happen if I do this? Or what will happen if I don't do that? Or what happens if I'm late? What happens? Probabilities, right? And since we've discussed already how nonlinear time works, there really is no future. There really is no past in that sense. But the way that we are rooted in the concept of linear time in this dimension, fear is one of the governing emotional responses that we have throughout the day. Even if it's about menial things or, life-altering things. we really need to just get into the spiritual, more non-physical, metaphysical perspective of what fear is and why it happens.
Yeah.
Fear is woven into the experience, the human experience of having an ego, living in the third and fourth dimensional matrix.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the core vibrational emotions that humans experience as part of the framework here. It's something that comes with it. Now, we did a channeling in December 2018 for the channel panel. And the being I channel, Hermes, got into the concept of how you can use darkness and light together, and how you can integrate fear and use it as a tool. And so doing these programs, I think it's always most important to put a positive spin on something that is seemingly negative, but you can use it in an empowering way to sort of transcend some of the negative ways that we look at things. Negative. That was a weird word. So if you subscribe to the concept of, reincarnation, or the fact that we live multiple parallel lives, and you subscribe to the concept that there are contracts and agreements that you sign up for before you physically incarnate into a life, into an identity, into a persona. And with that persona, that personality, and the ego that comes with it, you're going to have a list of contracts and agreements that you signed up to experience throughout an incarnation. And one thing that'll come pre-programmed with those is certain reactionary types to things. So you might have a triggering point that another person doesn't have. You're scared of things. You're scared of things that other people are not scared of. You have desires towards certain specific things that are unique to you that others do not have.
Right.
These are part of your soul contracts and your agreements that you take on when you have an incarnation, as you go through the incarnation loop. And those are set up for you specifically for you to explore certain themes and go through certain experiences to fulfill whatever agreement or contract you made to come into experience. So oftentimes when we have an excitement or a desire, or we have a fear towards something that's unique to us, it's usually within the themes that we're set to explore. Another way you can look at the reason why we as individuals have specific fears about something is in addition, aside from the contracts and the agreements concept, you may be tapping into other lifetimes, parallel incarnations, where they died a certain way, or they experienced a certain type of trauma in a certain type of way. And then in this incarnation, you may have an innate fear or an aversion to that experience or that circumstance, because you're connecting to that other lifetime where you had an experience or a circumstance that was so imprinting on your spark, on your soul energy, that it translates, it reverberates throughout all, the universe and all of the dimensions and all of your parallel selves. They are all in some way affected by that life. And those incarnations and those lives and those fractals of you, those perspectives of you, are also affected by you in this life, in this incarnation, reverberates out and affects those lives as well. So although it's unconscious, we're always sharing experience within our own, cluster of incarnations, of experiences, of fractals that affect each other. Okay? That can be another triggering point as to where fear comes from in a more spiritual, metaphysical perspective, is that you have trauma that you're playing out here. And so when something deliberately scares you, it's a subconscious, unconscious, re-experiencing of that trauma from another circumstance or experience. And that also just works for this lifetime as well. Let's say that, when I was a kid, something specific happened to me with cars, and now I'm afraid to be in cars, is an example. Then that fear translates forward linearly. Okay. that can come to you in this lifetime from other lifetimes, not just your childhood. Okay. That's why irrational fears usually come from other lifetimes, in the sense that people don't know why they're actually afraid of spiders. They just have an innate fear of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have an irrational fear, it's not rational because you don't have an explanation or a source cause to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think irrational fears come from other lifetimes.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have an irrational fear, you could really sit with that concept and wonder, in what way is it affecting you? How
Mhm.
debilitating is that fear in this life? And where does it really come from?
Yeah.
Is it coming from some repressed memory from your childhood, or is it coming from another life?
Mm-hmm.
So then let me touch on real quick why we would explore a theme from another lifetime or from another incarnation of ours that isn't seemingly our own, because what's relevant is this life, not that one.
Right.
But they're all tied together like a web, like a thread, like an
Mhm.
invisible tether, sharing experiences to each other constantly. You might be negatively affected by a traumatic experience in another life. And in order to sort of resolve that trauma and transmute it,
Mm-hmm.
is to explore a theme of that particular circumstance in this life, to
Right.
play it out, to unravel it, to unfold it, and ultimately conquer it. You know, getting into the hero's journey, there's always a trial or a tribulation to overcome.
Right.
There's always something to resolve. Otherwise, there's no drama and contrast, there's no polarity, and there's no growth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're always looking to not only expand upon, but learn from and grow from experiences.
Mm-hmm.
That often comes in the way of a challenge to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an irrational fear, what do they say? You know, you got to just leap.
Yeah.
Are you afraid of the dark? You have to walk into that dark room
Mm-hmm.
and see what's really in there waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all part of the self.
Mm-hmm.
We create our own reality, and we're all having a subjective version of a collective universe.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, everything within your own reality is an aspect of yourself, or in some way, shape, or form a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Not always literally, but, you know, euphemistically and through symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
So what's in the dark? What's in the corner of that dark, scary room that you can't see into because it isn't quite illuminated with enough light yet?
Mm-hmm.
So within the darkness can only be more of ourselves as we create our own reality.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a fear of the dark, a fear of what's in the dark room, there is something in there that has a message for you.
Mm-hmm.
Something to reveal. You know? Something to explore. And once you dive into that dark room, you build up your courage, you dive in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they say you got to take the leap. You go in there, you find out what it is. Whatever that is to you that's significant, that's creating such a fear of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you ultimately have to invest in. It's something that you have to dive into.
Mm-hmm.
Because fear in that sense, and I learned this actually from Bashar and Hermes as well, fear is a messenger. It's a tool that you can use that will help reveal something about yourself that is hidden so that you can ultimately grow. And once you discover what that is, that's more sovereignty, that's more power, that's more self-empowerment, because
Yeah.
now you know something about yourself that you were hiding from yourself.
Right.
Okay? Lessons are hidden in fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fear isn't actually there to help drive you away of making a bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
Let that sink in. Let that marinate.
So think about all of the best triumphs you've ever had. And a lot of the time they're ones that you have like worked really hard for and you've pushed through a lot of things. Fear is just like that. Overcoming a fear is one of the best feelings in the world. It's just unbelievable.
It is.
Because you've brought out such a power in yourself that you didn't know you had. So, I mean, that's enough motivation right there to just give it a try. Just see what is in there. Just take a little peek. You don't have to dive fully in if you don't want to, but at least give it enough attention that you have an awareness of it instead of just always hiding from it or shoving it away or shoving it down, whatever it is.
Big facts.
Yeah.
Big point.
Just give it enough awareness that like you understand its purpose and you can make peace with it from there on out. It doesn't have to be, you know, a full-blown leap. It can be something small over time. But once you come to terms with what it is and what it has to offer you, so much will change.
Absolutely. And to quote Bashar again, he says, fear is a messenger that will come knocking at your door, and it'll keep coming back, and it will keep coming back, knocking harder and harder and harder until you open it and see what the message is that it has to deliver. And fear is so succinctly on your side as your friend to help you grow from something and learn from something, that it will come back to your house and it will kick the door in if it has to.
Yeah.
So the sooner that you really delve in and start exploring what this thing is that scares you or why something specific scares you, get to the root of that, then the less dramatic fear's messages have to be in order to get through to you. Like Lauren said, you can start taking baby steps into it, but take the steps you will.
Yeah.
And explore the theme. You have to. You must. It will reoccur, and it will get stronger and louder and faster until you do. I could take my own advice on this when it comes to like medical things. I'm somebody that struggled with medical challenges throughout my life. And oftentimes I get very concerned and I have a lot of fear about, you know, what my body's trying to tell me. But when I go and invest in that, finally just figure it out, oftentimes it's nothing.
Or not as big of a deal as we were making it out psychologically.
Then prolonging it and being afraid of it makes it worse.
Makes it louder.
Makes it louder. And another advantage that you can capitalize on when it comes to using your fear as a positive tool for growth is I'm an actor. And one of the biggest things earlier on in an acting career is you have to audition a lot. Whether you send in a tape audition or you go to a physical casting director's office and you read in front of directors and industry producers and writers and you know, they tape you there, and it's a lot. Being in the room with other potential candidates that are all going for your job, for the same goal that you have. And then you're in there pouring your heart out, doing, putting your best foot forward, giving the best performance that you can in the short amount of time that you've had to work with the character and study the sides. And there can be a lot of fear for an actor to perform well and give the director, what they're looking for. But once you go in and you do it, and the audition goes well, you realize that the fear was all of the attachment that you had to a specific outcome.
Right.
As opposed to just staying present with the journey of going and doing an audition and seeing the value in that. We get so attached. The fear comes to what we think is going to result of this circumstance.
Right.
That's a big hindrance that we self-impose on our, we self-impose this hindrance by attaching so much what if to an outcome of something that doesn't exist.
That's a really great point, and I would like to explore that a little bit further. So, for example, if somebody's afraid of the dark, are they just afraid of a lack of light? Or are they afraid of what's in there? We don't know. It's all these possibilities and insecurities, and if something attacks me, am I going to be able to hold up? It's not necessarily the fear of the thing or the circumstance, it's what's attached to it, which I think is a really important point. So when you go in for an audition, you're not necessarily scared of performing because you know that you can perform, otherwise you wouldn't be there. You're afraid of, other attachments that you've put on that circumstance. That's a great point. I really appreciate that. I hadn't considered it that way. It's more about the inner work that you have to do to release fear than it is about facing the fear itself.
And once you do the inner work and take those actions, first, obviously, by acknowledging that you have a fear, okay, I am afraid to do this.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. I'm afraid of this.
Mm-hmm.
Own that.
Mm-hmm.
Then start discovering why.
Yeah.
Doing the inner work, asking yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I go into this dark room, if I go to this audition, if I drive this car, if I don't take this job that I think I need the money for, what am I afraid will happen?
Right.
And always ask yourself that question and see what the answer is. You'll generate an answer in your mind, and then you can explore that further and keep trying to dig and dig and dig at this until you get to the root belief that is generating the fear itself. Fear and belief like to hide itself within your ego, within your psyche, within your mind, within your emotions, because ultimately you're containing it there because you think that it's serving you in some way. You think that there's some sort of self-preservation and not doing the thing that you're afraid of so that you can avoid some negative result. However, 9 times out of 10, and I'm not saying this forever, every situation, but 9 times out of 10, the thing that you are afraid of isn't as scary as it looks.
Yeah.
The bad thing that you are worried about happening doesn't always happen. Okay? So if I may, we're going to shift gears a little bit. As I mentioned before, as I prefaced this episode with the fact that we like to have a positive spin on things, we like to empower people, I am going to shift gears and talk about something a little bit darker. Okay? Might make you feel a certain type of way, but this is all coming from a perspective of knowledge is power. We want to educate people on what we've studied and learned about in order to empower you by just knowing more.
Right.
And taking what resonates with you and leaving the rest, but having an awareness of everything that's available to see what may or may not be affecting you in a underlining unconscious way. Because this is a conscious show. Okay, we're here to expand consciousness.
Yeah.
So you need to be conscious about things and have an awareness of them so you can better discern what you choose to be affected by. Okay, here we go. Take a sip.
Take a sip.
If you subscribe to the concept that we live in a matrix, in a holographic universe, and you're familiar with the creation story of mankind, then you get into a lot of the more fear-based concepts that there are beings from other dimensions and densities, extra dimensional beings, higher dimensional beings that could be malevolent, could have agendas, and are part and parcel to the program and the structure of this reality, which is limitation,
Right.
separation, fear. Those are all very limiting concepts that some believe we are subject to and withheld within these paradigms. And we could get into talking about whatever your name is for the elites, the cabal, the Illuminati, the deep state, whatever your definition is for those oppressors, for the ones that there's a massive understanding of the fact that we are under certain types of control and manipulation from, the what is it called? The hidden hand, so whatever your terminology for those entities, that organization is, I have my own beliefs and theories about that as well, which would be higher dimensional entities that, influence our reality from a more higher dimensional perspective, and that we are placed within structures and paradigms that are limiting and fear-based. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. The fear-based limiting beliefs that we have are often given to you, and you are literally programmed with, like software, when you're a child. And these fears come from religion. They come from war and conflict and violence. These fears, unfortunately come from entertainment.
Yeah.
They come from the news.
From programming.
They come from video games. They come from societal and communal cultures. Okay? And these are handed down to you through indoctrined programming that you assume as your own reality as a kid, when you're young, when you're malleable, when you're a sponge and you're trying to learn everything that you can, and everything is the truth when you're a kid, which is why movies are so scary. Say for example, I used to work for Spirit Halloween. Okay. And one thing that we always thought was funny was when the little kids come in, they're scared of the animatronic toys, or they're scared of the big, spooky statues that they sell. And from an adult's perspective, they're not scary. But from a child's perspective, it's very real to you. You don't know that that isn't threatening or harmful. Take that concept, but throw in beliefs and fears that are given to you as facts, big facts, about what happens when you die, or what will happen if you don't go to college, or what will happen if you don't have a job, or what will happen if you eat a certain type of food or a certain drink, or what will happen if you don't look both ways when you cross the street.
Yeah.
That's a really, really touchy one, because let me tell you, if you are told let's say it seems practical to you, right? From the third dimensional perspective, from the ego's perspective, that's a big one. What happens if you don't look both ways when you cross the street? Well, you could get hit. I remember being told that as early as I had memories by my parents. That makes a lot of practical sense to you. But getting back to the fact that we create our own reality, whatever we are told when we're young and we're learning, we will assume as a belief that is true to us. And it becomes rooted and buried under so many years and layers of more programming and beliefs that are given to us as facts that we don't even know what our own truths are.
Right.
We just go along with whatever our society teaches us, whatever the culture passes down. That is, we assume that now is our way of life, the way we do things and the things that we subscribe to and believe. However, if we do create our own reality, which we do, and you are told that always crossing the street whenever you feel is appropriate is safe, and you live in a community that is totally congruent with that, nothing would literally ever happen to you. Okay? Now, that's a very extreme example. I know it seems nonsensical to you, but I'm telling you how extreme the concept is that we do create our own reality and how important that is. So when you're young, if you're indoctrinated into a certain type of religion that constantly tells you how to live your life and what will happen if you don't live that way, you will assume that as a belief. Okay?
That belief will translate into
a fear, which can very well lead to a physical circumstance that will reflect the fear you have. Okay? Now, I'm not telling you to fucking run into traffic. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, don't do that, please.
But if you live in a society, that maybe is off the grid, and they tell you that with practice, you can float, that you are not bound by gravity, and everybody in that community believes that and exercises that, and that's what you're taught as a child, and you're never given an example through television or media or the news or religion or any structure that tells you otherwise. Monks in Tibet levitate. They do that there. Okay? That's what I'm trying to tell you. That when you're a child, you're a sponge. Okay? And yes, sometimes you are born in your incarnation with themes to explore. And you will walk that path one way or another and explore those themes, and you may have a fear of certain circumstances because of those themes, yes. But there are many, many other things within the malleability and the freedom of your life and your free will of your life that is not scripted, contracted, or agreed upon. And all that gray area can be very distorted, very manipulative. Okay? And the powers that be, the ones who, hijack and manipulate the power of the mind, which is really what we're talking about, they can design certain forms of programming that they will
fear-based.
That are fear-based. Thank you.
In order to corral you into what they prefer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is what I believe what a large part of our entire society is built on. I think it's built on fear-based culture, fear-based structure. There's a lot of fear porn out there. People love to watch the news and hear about the church that burnt down. They love to watch the news and hear about the drama and politics. They love to hear about the new type of cancer that just popped up overnight. We
Right.
love that. We soak up that fear, right, as a society. But why? You ever ask yourself why you get off on being scared all the time? Why you're so addicted to looking at, how you can avoid something from happening that you may never experience in your entire lifetime
Right.
until the concept of that
Is
happening
presented
to
to
you
you.
is presented to you for you to accept and then manifest.
So I believe our next episode is about creating a reality, so we'll get more into it then. But the universe is a giant mirror, and it only can hear like keywords of what you say. So if you're driving in a car and you're like, please don't hit me, I don't want to crash, it's not hearing like, I don't want that to happen. It's just hearing crash, please hit me. And so it will give you that, even if it's just, if you're so scared and you're thinking to yourself over and over and over, I do not want this circumstance to happen to me, because you're creating those thoughts, it's being attracted to you. And then you probably will wreck your car. I mean, I know I have a lot of car trauma that I've been carrying around with me. And for a while, I just kept telling myself, like, if you follow all the rules and you're super aware of everything going on, you're not going to get into an accident. So it's not going to happen. But then somebody else wasn't following the rules, and then I got hit, and I still had to deal with the fear and the trauma over and over because I was attracting it so much.
And
Fear
then
is so powerful. It's so loud, not even just to you, but
Yeah.
to the universe.
it is one of the loudest.
Yeah.
And that, getting back to my point on that getting back to my point on that token, on that mark, is that we are enlisted into structures and paradigms that are fear-based. They are literally designed to instill a certain response from you so that you perpetuate that being a circumstance or a possibility that you can experience. Okay? And we are governed by the law of attraction and the law of repulsion. And they know that. So they created experiences that will work within those laws of the universe, so that it's almost, in a sense, like the free will is being infringed upon by letting you make choices, but giving you, infecting you with certain beliefs that will influence you to make a specific choice in a situation. And we're always driven by that fight or flight, that fear response to avoid danger. So my point is with the traffic thing or the levitation thing is that, yes, there are universal laws. There are laws of the physics of this reality, and I agree with that. But what I am saying is that the power of belief can supersede a lot of things, including physics. It can.
Absolutely.
That's a fact. So the empowering reason that I'm telling you this is that if you understand that you might be getting steered or guided in a certain direction that doesn't have your greatest good, your best interest, but you think it does because you've been programmed into believing that that is where you will be safe, you may or may not have been misled.
Right.
And this gets back to the original point that you can always ask yourself when you're afraid of something, when you have a fear about something, what am I believing to be true about this circumstance that is dangerous to me?
Right.
What am I afraid will happen if I actually do this or go through this particular process or experience? What am I afraid will happen? Ask yourself these questions, because you will innately, your inner voice and your spirit guides and your higher mind, they are all sources of information that will help guide you to your truth.
Yeah.
And when you uncover facts, your facts, that are discordant to whatever the belief and the programming is, and all you have to do is do that inner work to discover what that belief is, and you don't agree with it anymore, maybe. It no longer serves you, you release it and you let it go, and then guess what? You're no longer afraid of the thing.
Right.
That's why they say take the leap. Because sometimes if you just do the thing that you're afraid of, you see that there was nothing scary there, and it was really just about the process of you finding your inner power.
Right.
So that's what we want to do here. We want to give you your power back, give you your sovereignty back. And part of that, includes informing you about things that you may not know are happening or that you're subject to. Like, societal structures and paradigms in boxes around your head that program you into thinking a certain way, acting and behaving a certain way to protect yourself out of fear.
Right.
So the final concept that I can offer you is going back to the concept of higher dimensions and higher densities. There are beings that exist there, just like we exist here with our animal and our plant kingdom, and there are other beings that exist in other planes. And these are some beings that also can infringe on your free will, terms of negative thought forms, okay? Like thought parasites and more malevolent fear-based entities that, some believe can attach to you when you are in lower states of vibration, anxiety, anger, depression, sadness. Fear is a big one. They feed on fear. They literally, like a parasite, will feed on your fear. And sometimes if you leave yourself open to these non-physical, malevolent negative entities, they can attach onto you and not only feed on the fear that you generate, but they can actually influence your moods and your sleep patterns and your stress levels to keep you in like a lower state of vibrational frequency, in which case they're always influencing you to maintain a lower vibration so that you're going to be more in a lower vibrational state, which makes you more subject to the fears that we face every day. And then they just continue feeding, continue absorbing your energy, your life force through the fear that you give off. Some say that, when getting to keeping a higher vibration, that could be within your diet, certain foods and beverages and things like that. But smoking, habitual drug use, alcohol is a big one that, is said to lower your vibration. And these particular entities like to attach to you when you're in these lower functioning vibrational states of being. And when you're in these states, I believe that we also give into our fears even more. And even,
you're a lot more vulnerable.
Thank you. That's a great word. We are more vulnerable to giving into fear, stress, anxiety, sadness, worry, depression, all of those like negative emotional states. The concept that I'm talking about is that there are entities, non-physical entities that can see that and attach onto you and feed off of you when you're in those states of being. So the longer that you're in those states of being, the better it is for them. And so that was another concept that I wanted to talk about very lightly. We won't get into all of the names of them and the specific frequencies that they exist in and what all their agendas are, but this is just a very sort of like entry level description of the concept. There are alternate density and dimensional beings that can both instill and feed off of your fear. And having a knowledge of these concepts can empower you in the sense that you should go do some research. Look up what these beings are and, what the agendas are and see if this is something that you resonate with. And if it is, there are ways that you can protect yourself from it. There are things that you can do in any given moment throughout the day to keep your vibration high and vibe fast. And so these beings can't even see you, let alone attach onto you, because you become invisible to them when your frequency is higher and higher and higher in vibration. And expanding your consciousness and absorbing knowledge, I think is a very sovereign and empowering thing, which is why I talk about all this dark stuff, so that you can be more knowledgeable about some of the things that might be operating behind the scenes that you don't even know exist.
Right.
Okay. So these are all some, empowering ways to look at the concept of fear, where it comes from, why it happens, what we are subject to, and also what we create for ourselves. What do you have to say to close on the concept of fear?
I would say that I think that we covered pretty much all the topics. But if there is anything that anybody wants to share or add, any new perspectives, always let us know. We're open to everything. And, you know, I think the best way to get over a fear is just acknowledge it and learn. Learn what it's trying to teach you, whether it's about entity attachments, whether it's about programming from the Matrix. Find the lesson and embrace it. It's the best way to overcome anything.
I agree. Well said, Lauren.
Alrighty.
So this concludes the episode of Fear. We will thank you, Steeltown Entertainment, for hosting the space that we record these episodes in. Thank you for joining us on our perspective, thoughts, and beliefs of fear. You're always welcome to share your insights with us.
And don't forget about the link in the description for Celestial Oddities, Daniel's other podcast.
Oh.
No.
That's so meta.
That's so meta.